Welcome to the BSW Foundational Fall Field Instructor Orientation. This is the online version so that our field instructors have access to all of the information. Please be sure that you are consulting the supporting documents that were provided to you in the email that was sent to you with the link for this orientation. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions after you have completed watching and listening to this recording. Hi, welcome, and thank you again for watching this online orientation. We've worked really hard to make sure to get our orientations and as much information as we can on to an available site to all of our field instructors, as field instructor orientation is now mandatory every 2 years, either in person or via this online version. We really want to make sure that all of our field instructors have the support and the resources that are needed to be able to adequately teach our students, as field is such an important part of our curriculum. In addition, this information also helps you as the field instructor to switch from your practice role to more of that instructor role, which is what we expect when you're working with our students. My name is Suzanne Carey. I'm the director of the Field Education Program for the School of Social Work here at University of Missouri. I am starting my 12th year here now. Prior to that, I worked at University Hospital in pediatrics for almost 15 years. And in addition now, I do some private practice on this side. I really do appreciate you taking the time to participate in this orientation, as well as agreeing and volunteering to be a field instructor for us. I know that that can be a big undertaking, and I just want to say how much we appreciate that and how much we truly rely on our field instructors as adjunct professors to be able to provide for our students. Who will soon be practicing in our communities and be our colleagues. I also wanted to introduce Professor Jane Peaster, who is the BSW Field Coordinator. Most of you have probably interacted with her at some point. So we're very lucky to have Professor Peaster and all the work that she does for the field program. I have taken this orientation and split it into 4 sections to be more user-friendly for you. The 4 sections include, the first one is an introduction, talking about the responsibilities of the students and the field instructors, as well as pertinent safety issues. The second section is about supervision and then a brief review of the BSW curriculum. The third section begins reviewing assignments and task stream, and it's going to go over the learning plan. And then the fourth and final section is more assignments, where we go over specifically the journal and the midterm and the final and how those are completed in task stream as well. We hope that you enjoy this, and please know if you have any questions, you always can contact Professor Peaster or myself, and we're happy to answer those. Thank you. Okay, let's look at a few BSW program details. This practicum is a foundation or a generalist practicum, meaning you should get a little bit of depth over a large variation of the agency, a large area of the agency. So you want to expose the student to as much as you can in micro, meso, and macro components of the agency. The foundational practicum is 400 hours towards competency. 400 hours is the minimum amount to reach competency. Some students may need more than 400 hours to reach competency, and some students might be able to reach competency in that minimum of 400 hours. Typically, practicum is mid-August through early December. You can see those dates on your slide here. The first week that students are in practicum, they will complete a full 40 hours a week, trying to get in as many hours as they can before classes begin. The remaining 16 weeks, they will work approximately Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 5, for a total of 24 hours each week. Some students, based on your agency hours and what you offer, might vary from that a little bit, but they do all need to get a minimum of 24 hours each week. The students are in classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The field instructor, which is you, is responsible for that weekly supervision and reviewing learning plans and journals, and not just reviewing them, but making specific comments and giving the students some really good, insightful feedback for those. And then the faculty liaison, who's appointed by the School of Social Work and assigned to the student, is going to come and visit you and the student 2 times during the semester. The faculty liaison will come about the first 3 to 4 weeks, just to make sure that you guys have a firm relationship and a nice and specific learning plan, so that you have a good foundation for which to proceed for the rest of the semester. And then the faculty liaison will come again at midterm and review the midterm document, the student progress, and the relationship between the student and the field instructor to be sure things are progressing well. On this slide, you're going to see some specific dates so that you can make sure you're following the path that practicum should follow. You'll see here the date in August that the students will attend orientation and begin their first full week of practicum, which is 40 hours a week. Then the next week, you will see the dates here on your slide that they will begin their regular part-time hours, which is typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 5. Remembering that they're in classes Tuesday and Thursday from 8 to at least 1. And so it's important that they attend every class. Sometimes you will have field instructors say, oh, this meeting is happening, or this group only happens at this time. Can you get out of class and come to that? But we ask that students do not try to get out of class. They have important content that they need to learn during each class period. Then you'll see the dates here for those initial site visits, which happen in the first 3 to 4 weeks. Making sure that the learning plan and the orientation checklist are completed in task stream before that faculty liaison visit. Then you'll, that first getting that learning plan in is really a big hump. And once you get that learning plan in, then things kind of start to even out, and it'll be a little bit easier for you and for the student. And so then you can see Journal 1 and Journal 2 due dates. And then we have the midterm visits. Again, the midterm evaluation and midterm signature page are due in task stream prior to that visit. So everything needs to be finished in task stream so that the faculty liaison can discuss those entries at the visit. Then you'll see the next due dates for Journal 3, Journal 4, and Journal 5. And lastly, we have the final evaluation, which also has that signature page due in task stream by 5 p.m. And in addition, on that day, we have a field appreciation breakfast, free breakfast for you, where we will award the BSW Field Instructor of the Year. So we hope to see everyone there. Let's take some time to review responsibilities of both the student and the field instructor during the semester. The student obviously has assignments to complete during the semester. The student is responsible to get those assignments completed without the faculty liaison or the field instructor pushing them along and hounding them along the way. The student knows those assignment due dates and should be able to discuss those with you and plan with you for those assignments. We ask that students are active in their own learning. Each student has his or her own goals for what they want to get out of practicum and for what they are wanting to learn in practicum. It's important to incorporate those desires and those preferences into the learning plan and into the structure of the semester. We also ask that students participate in their own self-evaluation and that they accept feedback from their field instructor as well, to continue to grow and to learn throughout the entirety of the practicum and the semester. We talk with the students during their orientation about dressing appropriately, making sure to cover those areas, the backs, the bottoms, the breasts, the belly, making sure that they are dressed professionally so that the messages that they convey to their clients and to their agencies and to the community are professional ones. There may be more than one student at your agency, and so we ask that the students work well with other students and or the colleagues that may exist in the agency. Professionalism is always the goal, and teaching the students that professionalism and being clear upfront and in the beginning of the semester about your expectations related to professionalism. We also speak with students about time management skills. Often these days, it's difficult for students not to check their social media, as that's how they receive most of their information about meetings and community information and just general communication overall. And so it's important to be clear with them again about your expectations related to phone use, computer use, and other technology that they may have available to them at their fingertips. Being sure that they're not on Snapchat or something, and instead they have some assignments maybe or some projects that they can do in their other downtime as they work for you. So be clear about your expectations and what they are allowed to do and not allowed to do, and make sure that they have plenty of work to fill their time and plenty of meaningful work to fill their time. I mentioned before, we ask that students are active in their own assessment of their own performance, and talking with their field instructor about the field instructor perceptions of the student performance. So you're prompted to do that at midterm and at final, but we are hopeful that the student and field instructor are speaking on a weekly basis about performance, making sure that both the student and the field instructor are on the same page, and the student understands his or her own strengths and areas that some growth is needed. Students are often tempted to miss class for field. There might be a group or there might be a function that's happening that happens to be during a class period. We ask that students do not miss class for field. We do not want them to miss major content that they will be tested over or that they will need as they become a professional in our field. If there are issues that are occurring, we ask that the student and the field instructor contact the faculty liaison and the field director if needed about any issues. Those issues can be performance issues, they can be absence issues, they can be great projects the student's interested in that you want to highlight, awards that they may have been given, or some occurrences that may have been unforeseen that might be happening in practicum, such as a safety concern. Some field instructor responsibilities which tend to mirror the student responsibilities. We ask field instructors to please be sure you have a planned orientation for the student. You know what the student will be doing that first week and possibly into the second week. Who will the student follow for that observation and shadowing time? What assignments or experiences do you want them to have in the first week, and having those set up and scheduled for the student. Being sure that all of the agency staff is aware that the student will be starting on this day, so that there's a welcoming environment, so that the student begins to automatically and quickly feel included in the agency and a part of that agency. The field instructor will need to help with the formulation of the learning plan and the checklist. Yes, the student does come with some ideas of what he or she wants from the practicum, especially after interviewing with you and hearing some of the opportunities that exist. However, the student is not familiar with all of the facets of each of your agencies, and so it's important that you share possible opportunities that may have come up since the interview, or that you have considered over the last 6 months since you spoke with the student last, that you wanted to add to that. Or you may have standard assignments or experiences that you add to the learning plan because you've had lots of students before and you've had similar experiences and you know what works and what doesn't. So you'll want to convey those to the student so that there's a full, robust learning plan to start the semester. The student has an orientation checklist that he or she will want to go over with you. That checklist covers just general orientation information as well as some confidentiality and some safety issues. So it's important for you to be able to sit with the student and review some of your own policies and make sure the student is aware of rights that he or she has as a student or a volunteer at your agency. So the student will actually want to sit with you and go over each of these checked items, and the student will then check them off in TaskStream and submit that form. Students always talk about wanting more comments and feedback on the journals. So as much comments as you can, please try to look at those. I know they take a little bit of time to go through, but that's how the student really receives very, very structured and thoughtful feedback from you on specific key experiences. And so I would really like you to take the time to look at those and provide some substantial feedback. I know that some of you do that in person instead of typing it into TaskStream. Please be sure that when you're doing that in TaskStream, you are documenting that you met with the student on this day and that you reviewed the journal verbally and in some depth, so that we have proof that that's been reviewed and that there has been a communication about that journal. It needs to be recorded in TaskStream in one way or the other. There are, as I said before, midterm and final evaluations where the student does a self-eval at both of those points, and then you as the field instructor complete an evaluation of the student at those 2 points. We ask again that you review performance more than just at these 2 points. We don't want any surprises for students 3 weeks into the practicum that they're doing poorly, and then they're suddenly surprised at midterm when they find out that their scores are very low. We want to be sure that everyone is on the same page and well informed of expectations and performance and progress. CSWE, the Council for Social Work Education, requires as a part of supervision that there is 1 hour per week of formal face-to-face supervision. So it's important that you have that time with the student where you sit down and have an opportunity for the student to ask questions and to process through what's been happening, to make connections to their classroom learning, to look at ethical situations, to look at the diversity and the social and economic justice opportunities within your agency. Off the cuff, just in the moment, they're not going to look into those issues in depth and remember that they're supposed to look at their learning plan. They're going to ask quick questions so that the flow of the day continues. However, that hour per week is a chance to stop that little bit of flow and to have an opportunity to really ask those questions and to form that mentoring relationship. The initial and the midterm meeting needs to be with the student, the field instructor, and the faculty liaison. If there is a task supervisor, the task supervisor should attend that as well. If there are concerns, again, we ask the student to convey those concerns quickly, and we ask the field instructor to do that as well. The faculty liaison is the first line that you guys would communicate with if there are any concerns or any positive experiences or stories or evaluations that you would like to share. If you are not satisfied with what's happening with the faculty liaison, you can contact me as the director and I'm happy to assist you. We would really like to take the time to discuss safety issues so that you can look at those through a different lens and evaluate those and be able to address any safety issues that may present to students during the practicum experience. On the orientation checklist, there are some safety components. Please be sure that you're taking the time to discuss those. We really, during the student orientation, encourage the students to take safety seriously. Students, often the BSWs especially, are quite young and forget that or overlook or underestimate some safety concerns and feel that these things happen to other people and not to them. However, it's important that we bring those concerns to the forefront and talk to students about ways that they can minimize any safety risks or safety hazards within the agency. There are risks with every agency. There might be more at some agencies than there are at others because of the population that you serve, because of where you are located, because of the hours that you are open, because of the number of staff that's at your agency. Those types of things can really vary. However, there is risk at every agency. And so we really like you guys to discuss that with the students and to not just discuss it, but where asked, to provide hard copies and written policies so that the student has some direct evidence for guidance as they progress throughout the semester, and that they can take as many preventive measures as possible. If there are any safety risks, safety concerns, or if there are any specific incidents that have occurred, please contact the field office immediately. You can contact your faculty liaison, or again, you can contact the director of field. Some examples that I've had of this that might put this a little more into context for you. One example was a student was riding with a staff member to a meeting, and another student was riding with a staff member in another situation to a home visit. And in each of these different situations, there was a car accident, and in one, the student was injured and had to go to the emergency room, and in the other, the student was not immediately evident that there was an injury, and so elected not to go to the emergency room. And so it's important to talk about those potential risks. For example, in those situations, I was contacted immediately, which I very much appreciated, and the student had questions automatically about workman's compensation. The School of Social Work does not provide workman's compensation because the students are not employees of ours. Some field agencies provide workman's comp for their volunteers, and the students are considered a volunteer. Other agencies do not cover them for workman's comp. So it's important for you to look at that within your agency and your agency structure and know what benefits are available to the student and which are not. And again, what rights the student has for that. Other concern is a student was hit by a cane by one of the residents of a facility. The student was fine. However, we needed to ensure that there was a plan for the student's safety as he or she returned to that organization. We needed to make sure that an incident report was filed, that we had that incident report in our records, and that I talked with the student directly to be sure that he or she felt safe in returning to that facility, and that there was a formal plan in place for how to minimize any further safety concerns. Also, there's been safety concerns where the student was with a client by themselves and the client injured himself or herself. So there's another situation where the student was exposed to sexual harassment by a staff member. And so there's multiple issues of safety that can occur. Please make sure that you're taking those seriously and you're thinking critically about what might present to the student while they're here. What are the possibilities? And review those and talk about the student rights and the student options. Just a few more tips and guidelines about safety before we conclude part 1 of the recording. Make sure again that you're informing students of any potential safety or health risks, that if you do have any education, whether that's through webinar or direct in-services or readings, that you do provide any safety training, any de-escalation techniques, or any other training related to safety issues. Please provide those guidelines and policies for the student so he or she has some direction in these issues. Educate students regarding universal precautions whenever needed, and making sure again that the student is also aware of harassment policies. There are lots of angles with safety issues, and harassment is one of those. And then take the steps to improve the safety of the work environment as much as possible. We ask students, again, to take this seriously, and we provide examples to them so that they can understand that issues do happen. We ask them to know the protocol and to know their own rights. We ask that the students, when allowed, can keep a cell phone with them, especially if they're traveling outside of the office to meetings or with clients or to home visits or anything like that. We also think it's important that if a student is not feeling comfortable about doing a home visit independently, that they don't have to. The school supports them in that if they feel any kind of discomfort about riding with someone in a car, going to an appointment with someone, that if they feel uncomfortable with that they have the right to refuse that. And the school will support them in that. We want them to feel safe and to trust their instincts. We ask students not to bring electronics to the office or any other valuables unless it's absolutely necessary, so that they have less to lose and less distractions as well. Students should always get to know a client's history prior to seeing them whenever possible. Obviously, we all have to see clients or go into situations where we don't have a history or certainly don't have a good history. And so that will happen. However, if there is someone who's worked with this client before, or a file on this client, or a past assessment, or any kind of information, it's important to be sure to share that with the student. If the student has had past belligerent behavior, or past drug abuse, or past criminal assault charges, or anything that would be placing the student in any sort of safety concern or danger, it's important to talk with the student about those. And again, find out what is the student's level of comfort and what is the student's level of skill. Is he or she ready for this experience? We talk with students, many of them do some home visits during their practicum. And so we talk to them about specific safety planning for home visits. Most of your agencies, if you do home visits, have those policies in place as well. If the student feels more comfortable, we ask them to travel in pairs, making sure that they notify someone at all times where they're going to be and when they will return. And if they're altering that plan, that they contact with someone and let them know of that change in the plan. Again, asking them to carry cell phone and to know where they're going, what time of day is best to go there and the most safe to go there, where they'll park, and how they will get in and out of the home. Students, for the most part, are very aware of these things once we've discussed them and we've gone through them. However, it's important for you to remind them, and certainly you know the specifics of your agency, and so it's important for you to review those with the student, not just at the beginning of practicum, but ongoing throughout the practicum. This concludes part 1 of the first section of the recording for the BSW Field Instructor Orientation. Thank you for listening to this, and hopefully I'll be with you in recording part 2.